Welcome to Animal Stories for Kids. If you like our stories, please give us a 5-star rating, subscribe to our podcast, and share it with your friends and family. If you're listening on Spotify, you can support the podcast through listener support. Plus, check out exclusive show-related content and join the community at patreon.com/Animal Stories for Kids. And now, it's time for our story. Once upon a time, there was an Asian giant hornet named Toyohiko. Toyohiko, the Asian giant hornet, lived in a dark, abandoned badger burrow, nestled deep beneath the mountainside. He was a hard-working Asian giant hornet. While the other Asian giant hornets went out to gather food, Toyohiko was always busy in the quiet corners of the nest among the plump, restless, and hungry baby grubs. They were his responsibility, and he knew each and every one of them. Toyohiko's regular duties included guiding the other Asian giant hornets to the grubs that were the most hungriest as they came in with food to feed. One day, as it began to rain above the ground, Toyohiko, the Asian giant hornet, was calling over other giant hornets to feed the grubs. He found one that was really hungry, so Toyohiko looked around and an Asian giant hornet entered the nest, and it was about to go feed another grub until Toyohiko called it over. "Hey, over here! I'm pretty sure this one hasn't eaten in a few hours." He was standing above a grub that was hungry, and the other giant hornet flew over and said, "Thanks, buddy," and began to feed the hungry grub. Toyohiko, the Asian giant hornet, was known in the nest to be the best finder for the hungriest grubs. A week ago, he was able to feed all the grubs enough food so that they would stay put in their cell cavities after they made their own cocoons, so that they can become healthy, adult Asian giant hornets. Toyohiko wasn't the biggest or the strongest, but what he was good at was enough to help the whole colony provide for the next group of giant hornets to be born. He knew each little gurgle and twitch the little grubs would make to get his attention to feed them. He sometimes could even tell ahead of time which ones were going to be hungry even before they became hungry. And his job seemed as if it was never done. With each hungry hiss and desperate squeak, he could spot a grub needing urgent feeding from a mile away, or rather, a few millimeters away. When all the Asian giant hornets came in from their catches, they would often wait for Toyohiko to tell them where to go. But sometimes it would get so busy that some would just fly over any of the grubs and just feed them, even if they already ate. What would happen would be that some of the Asian giant hornets would eat more as grubs and would grow up to be bigger than the others. And Toyohiko wanted to make sure that the Asian giant hornets can all be similar in size, as much as he could help, that is. On this day, however, Toyohiko felt that something was different. It wasn't the fact that it was raining outside. The hornets weren't afraid of water coming into their nest because some of the hornets were able to push dirt around the entrance to protect the nest from a flood. But if it wasn't the rain, it had to be something else making him feel anxious. And the normal feeling he had about taking care of the grubs wasn't quite the same feeling he always had. It was much different this time. So he just had to investigate what it was around the nest that was making him feel so uneasy. "What's happening today that's making me feel so off?" asked Toyohiko, the Asian giant hornet, to himself as he flew around the nest. He would look at every single grub in their cell as he flew around trying to see if anything was not where it was supposed to be. And then he saw what it was. "I knew something was off today," said Toyohiko. "Uh-oh, this doesn't look good." And he found the source of his bad feeling. Hundreds of little grubs scrambling in their developing cocoons. It was the grubs trying to climb out of their cells before it was their time. Toyohiko, the Asian giant hornet, was panicking. This kind of thing didn't happen all the time. If the little grubs came out too early from their cocoons before they were fully formed, they would be weak and they wouldn't know what to do. and they would be even more hungrier than before. A few hundred half-formed larvae would eat up all the food, and there wouldn't be enough for them all to eat. "This could be a bad situation for the whole colony," said Toyohiko the Asian giant hornet. "If these half-formed grubs all come out at the same time, they'll be even more hungrier than the little grubs, and they'll eat up everything." And as Toyohiko the Asian giant hornet was trying to figure out how to resolve this issue, he remembered something he learned from an older hornet a while back. He remembered the older hornet telling him, "There is a way to handle the eager grubs. Nothing works better than a mudslide." Toyohiko the Asian giant hornet said to himself, "Yeah, okay. Mudslides for the hungry little grubs it is then." He flew over to the entrance of the nest where the dirt was turning into mud because of the rain outside above the ground. And Toyohiko the Asian giant hornet grabbed a little ball of mud from the entrance with his mandibles and brought it into the nest over an open spot, and he dropped the ball of mud. And he kept going back and forth, grabbing a little mud and flying over and dropping it until there was a slide made out of mud. It was a mudslide. The little anxious grubs then started to do something Toyohiko never saw before. They began tearing up their half-made cocoons and started crawling out of their cells, and Toyohiko the Asian giant hornet just watched in silence, hoping that they wouldn't go looking for food and just waiting and seeing if the mudslide would work. It was a tense moment for Toyohiko. And then he saw the mudslide starting to do its work. The little grubs that crawled out of their cells and couldn't wait to grow up started to slide on the mudslide and then squirming back up and sliding down the mud again. The little squirming grubs were having fun in the mud. They were having a mud party inside the Asian giant hornet nest. They slid, they tumbled, they chased each other in mud, forgetting all about their early escape out of their cells and forgetting all about eating more food. Until they all, one by one, started to get tired and sleepy. And after the little grubs had their fun time and spent all their energy on the mudslide, they were content enough to wiggle back to their little nooks and once again start building up their cocoons and continued their big sleep before they emerged as the next generation of Asian giant hornets in the next few weeks. The queen was alerted about the unusual mudslide, but she was impressed that Toyohiko the Asian giant hornet was able to use some creativity and cleverness to gently lead the little grubs back to their cells. And she slowly came over to Toyohiko and nodded her head as a sign of respect. "Toyohiko," she said, "your quick thinking and creative intervention has saved the nest. You have brought peace to the grubs and harmony to the hive." And all the other Asian giant hornets cheered, and Toyohiko the Asian giant hornet became a hero for every Asian giant hornet in the nest. He saved all of them, and the other hornets buzzed around Toyohiko, patting him with their antennae, joyfully clicking their mandibles in excitement. As the celebration died down, a quiet buzz rose from the back of the nest. A younger hornet came forward and said to Toyohiko, Mr. Toyohiko, can you teach me how to make a mudslide? I want to be as clever as you are. You're my hero." And this made Toyohiko feel so happy that he was actually able to see that in the end, the mudslide adventure wasn't just about saving the little grubs. It was now about inspiring the next generation. So he nodded, agreeing to the eager young hornet. and he knew that the future of the nest was going to be just fine. And the Asian giant hornet lived happily ever after. The end. The Asian giant hornet is also known as the northern giant hornet or the Japanese giant hornet and is the world's largest hornet. And they're also in the order of Hymenoptera. Asian giant hornets are predatory and hunt medium to large-sized insects like bees, other hornets and wasps, mantises, beetles, and even worms. The Asian giant hornet is also known as the murder hornet because they can take over 40 honeybees in a minute, and it can take a few Asian giant hornets to completely get rid of a whole colony of honeybees. These murder hornets can become an invasive species that threaten other bee populations that are very important to pollinate the crops in different areas. The Asian giant hornet can cut up other insects with their sharp mandibles and form them into food to feed their young. The Asian giant hornet can find a colony of other bees and mark it with a pheromone or a scent that will draw other Asian giant hornets to assist in taking over another hive. The Asian giant hornet, or the Vespa mandarinia, are marked with orange or yellow and black stripes, and they have a large yellow or orange head. They can be over 2 inches long, and their wingspan can be about 3 inches wide. They prefer to live in low mountain areas and forests. They can be found throughout Eastern Asia, and particularly in Japan, where they're actually known as the giant sparrow bee. And some have been found in Canada and in the state of Washington in the United States. The Asian giant hornet creates nests in the ground by digging and burrowing, or using abandoned burrows dug out by other animals, or they could also settle in other areas of rotting vegetation. The Asian giant hornet queens are larger than the workers. Asian giant hornet queens are the ones who look for a nesting site when they're ready to lay eggs, and once they find a good spot, they build a nest, gather food, and start laying eggs. Then some workers are born, and when enough workers are old enough, they'll be the ones to maintain the nest. Asian giant hornet females have stingers, while the males do not. Asian giant hornets feed their larvae, and when these grubs are ready, they will form a cocoon in their own little cell cavity in the nest, and in a few weeks, begin to develop until it's ready to come out as a new Asian giant hornet. The Asian giant hornet has a stinger that's 1/4 inch long, which can actually penetrate through some bee suits and are very painful, but not likely life-threatening to humans, but can be very lethal to other bees and wasps because of their size. The Asian giant hornet isn't really aggressive towards humans unless it's provoked. Have you seen a real-life Asian giant hornet before? If you have, where did you see it? If you want to write to us, ask your parent to email us at animalstoriesforkids@gmail.com and tell us what you think of our stories. We would love to hear from you. Thanks for listening to Animal Stories for Kids. If you like our stories, please give us a 5-star rating, subscribe to our podcast, and share it with your friends and family. If you're listening on Spotify, you can support the podcast through listener support. Plus, check out exclusive show-related content and join the community at patreon.com/animalstoriesforkids. Until next time, bye!